Hi guys, welcome to the first chapter of our class. Here I will do a little self-introduction and then we'll go over the contents that we will be learning over the next 25 chapters. So first, I was an architectural designer for 8 years, and after getting some architectural projects built from Frankfurt to Beijing, I went from making these real-life building props to making virtual props and characters, and now I'm a freelance CG artist. One of the reasons for becoming a CG artist was that since 2015, I've been creating 3D renderings and OCs as a hobby after work and realized that it's actually my passion and calling. And OC are what people call original characters, so it's your own fictional characters. Another reason was that the images of the maids I did, where one of the images is now the 7th most liked work on ArtStation, got me noticed. And from there, I began getting commissions from the likes of Tencent, Hero Games, the gaming investment company behind Black Myth Wukong, Archetype Entertainment, the company behind the upcoming sci-fi game Exodus, and many other. I believe that in the future, as the world becomes increasingly digital with the maturity of VR and AR technology, the world we create in the virtual realm will be equally as important as the things being created in the real world. Therefore, it's definitely a future worthy of pursuit. And like me, you probably did not go to art school or have learned 3D art, illustration, or animation in school. But that could also be a good thing, because with your intensive experience in life or whatever field you're doing, you can probably take that into the artwork you do and create something really, really original and really, really interesting. I'm sure that you probably have some questions or concerns prior to committing to our class. Questions could be if you're completely new to 3D character or art, where do you begin? Or you can ask the question that, I don't know Blender or any 3D modeling software. How do I create my own unique character? Or I use DAZ Studio for my 3D renders. What more can Blender do? Or that although you're familiar with Blender and that you do your own renders, you may also want to know how to make the renders look even better. And another question you may ask is how to create images that have a sense of narrative to them. Well, I'm going to answer every one of these questions. So for the first question, we will be using a software called DAZ Studio to create our base character, where you can basically use sliders to morph the face and the body of the character, just like how you would in a video game. Although additional customizations come with a price, even with the free version of DAZ Studio, we already have a skin texture and a rig that we can import along with the mesh into Blender, so we can skip the difficult process of making a character from scratch. And in Blender, we will also have the complete freedom to sculpt the DAZ character however we want. And now to answer the second question, DAZ is a really powerful tool for character creation, posing, and comes with a lot of ready-made assets that you can mix match to create your own character or scenes. But there will also come to a point where you feel that there are things here and there that you want to customize yourself, and that you want to take a step further with your work. Well, Blender is perfect for doing these small touch-ups for DAZ. You don't even have to model a lot of things in Blender. Just using the sculpt tools, you can easily alter the shape of the models without worrying about mesh or UVs. And with the shader node system, you can customize the existing textures already that come with assets with all kinds of possibilities. And also, Blender is by far one of the easiest 3D modeling softwares, and I will teach you step by step on how to create clothing, props, realistic hair, etc. And it's also perfectly okay if you don't want to learn these 3D modeling at this point. All the things that I create in this class will be provided to you, so you can just download them and just import them into our 3D files so you can follow along with the course. And for the next question, well, I'll be sharing some of my techniques, such as the 5-to-1 rule that I learned in architecture school, and how I approach textures and shading, and most importantly, how good lighting can make a render look. It can take a render from just 80% to 100%. So yeah, I will be sharing all my techniques with you, as well as some rules that I find that are really, really useful to use. And lastly, for our project, we will be basing it off of a base narrative that we will create step by step, in fact, in the next chapter. And I will teach you my methods of constructing a narrative and its setting, and use that as the blueprint to create the looks of our environment, our characters, and our outfits. And so without further ado, let's start on this amazing journey together. Hi guys. So today we're going to talk about how to start creating a story-driven scene from scratch. For today, we will not be using any 3D software. Instead, you are free to use any tool you'd like. Pencil and paper, or like me, a drawing tablet. I'm sure you have many experiences in life that, at first, seems to be quite mundane. It is these seemingly mundane feelings that are very real and makes you who you are. It is also these feelings that can be turned into a great narrative, touching those around you. But the question is, how? First, let's explore some of the feelings we might experience. It could be love, hate, rage, being lost, joy, anxious, friendship, and loneliness. Now see which of these feelings you have a unique attachment to. For me, loneliness left a great impression in me when I read somewhere stating that, despite social media, we are in fact becoming more and more lonely, spending more and more time by ourselves, physically hiding behind an avatar. I think this is a great theme. But the question now is, how do we turn this into a story? The principle that I use when trying to come up with a scene is creating an extraordinary event in an ordinary place. Let's first start with constructing this ordinary place. We can start exploring our experiences in life at first, and think of times you have felt alone. For me, loneliness usually happens at night, when walking by ourselves with no one else around. I remember once I saw an image of a vending machine standing by itself, lighting up an empty street surrounded by darkness, and I wonder how often anyone goes to this vending machine at night. I imagine that at the moment, if I bought something from this machine, maybe both the machine and I would feel delighted. There's a quote that I'm paraphrasing here. It goes roughly like this. People don't live for a lifetime. They don't live for the years, months, and days, but they do live for just a few moments. I can't remember exactly who said this, but from this quote, I get that we are living for the moments that define us. And when we are about to pass, it is these moments that we can think of, not the everyday months and days, but these moments that are extraordinary in our life. And we, through our pictures, are trying to create these moments. And it is these moments that can make the ordinary seem extraordinary. Now you can think of it as an exaggeration of what could normally happen. And this exaggeration can be a metaphor that expands upon our theme of loneliness. And in this case, what I'm drawing here is that when a lonely person wanders an empty street, sees a lonely vending machine, and for an instant feels a sense of joy at buying from this machine, only to realize that what comes out of it is not a bottle of sweet water, but it is himself. In this moment, he is then truly lonely, because in this world, when he seemingly expects something that is to bring him happiness, instead, it is only himself. There's only two of him in this world and no one else. So now the story closes back upon our original idea of loneliness. And you can see here the vending machine is turned into a claw machine, because with the claw machine the walls are transparent. Thus we can see better what the protagonist is buying. And in this case we can see a humanoid shape inside this claw machine. And it is the protagonist herself that is inside this claw machine. Here, I'm adding some simple colors to the sketch to get a sense of the possible color scheme for a snowy street at night. I got this color from my own experience of living in Canada, because it snows a lot there, as well as a reference image from which I think is very, very important to use. So always draw from references, because sometimes our imagination could be different from reality. And here I'm trying to capture that bluish cold winter night with some snow left reflecting the sky. The sky is usually lighter than the street due to the reflections in the clouds from nearby city lights. And inside the claw machine is a bright shade of pink that draws our attention to the most important part of our picture. And at the same time, this lighting lights up the cold environment with a warm and fuzzy atmosphere. So to contrast with the dark silhouette of the person as well as this cold bluish environment. So to reiterate, we must use references. I'm not showing any references in the video because due to copyrights, I don't think it's allowed. So it's there in the background. But having references is really, really important. And you should collect as many as you can, just so you have a better sense of the vision that you have pictured. It's sort of like a brainstorm cloud map where you compose your vision through these reference images, and at the same time you can clearly see in your head what you're trying to imagine and aim for. So always use references. Now that the first image, which captures our original vision, is done, we can start planning the next sequences of images that can further expand on our story. And how? Well, it's actually a little challenging because we're not creating a sequence of scenes like movies or films that can show our story, but rather we're including everything into one single scene. The question, the reveal, and the climax. We're including that all into one single scene. And one way to do this is to strategically hide the information that you don't want your viewers to know at first, and to reveal to them bit by placing our camera in different positions. And thus we can produce different sets of images, which then reveals our mystery bit by bit. And in the first shot, we can see that only the claw machine is lit up in the dark street with a silhouette of a hooded figure is standing in front of it. seemingly trying to buy something from the claw machine, and we see a rough humanoid shape in the machine. But now, as we move closer, we can better see what is inside the claw machine. It's a humanoid figure, which makes the scene a lot more interesting. At the same time, the identity of the figure, of this hooded figure, is still hidden, but the more information is being revealed, such as that the protagonist has a bag full of beer, and with one opened on the machine, giving clue to the state of mind of the protagonist. And we can also see the posture of the person inside the claw machine, her hairstyle. Maybe not what she's wearing or the details on her outfit, but we can see that maybe on her head there's a set of bunny ears, and that there are a bunch of fuzzy toys that are surrounding her, and then we can see more of the features and details of the machine. And at this distance, the design and the textures of the props, the protagonist's outfit, can be better seen. For the next these sequences of shots, I'm just gonna do rough sketches, so we don't have to go too deep into the details. We just need to know that the placement of the camera is there so that our story can be successfully told without, too much problems. Yeah, so we can, detail a little more of the environment, but that's about it. As long as in our head we have this idea of the progression that we want to achieve. The third shot uses the edge of the claw machine to bisect the view of inside and outside of the machine. In terms of composition, I want to have the inside and outside of the machine through a direct left and right comparison. Here the warm light lights up the profile face of the protagonist, contrasting with the cold blue light of the winter night in the background. We see that the protagonist also has a set of bunny ears, like the girl inside the machine, that are being weighed down by the hood of her jacket. And maybe we see her expression as being anxious. And we also see more of the details on her outfit and what she is wearing underneath the jacket. We can also see more of the girl inside the claw machine, such as what she's wearing inside the machine. Notice here we are not showing the face of the girl in the machine, instead only showing a side profile of our protagonist, so not to make a direct comparison between the two characters. This way our attention are all drawn onto the protagonist, the mood, the posture, and any additional details. Now, for the final shot, we are finally to reveal the climax. This final shot is a shot taken from inside the claw machine looking out, and this contrasts with all our previous shots of outside looking in. And at this instant, we can see a waist-up full frontal view of our protagonist and her face. And we can clearly see everything from her ears to her hair to her face and her outfit. And at the same time, both characters are now in the same shot and fully shown. And we can finally reveal that both the characters inside and outside are in fact the same person. Both have their hands placed on the same spot, only to be separated by a thin glass. Now that the sketches are done, we can take a look at the overall scene progression and composition. First, we go back to the principle of creating something extraordinary within an ordinary place. The environment, character, and the action of the characters are all ordinary, which is, in this case, a person walking in the dark alley and stopping at a vending machine or a claw machine. As the camera moves closer, we see that instead of a claw machine for stuffed animals, there's a girl with bunny ears inside. And as we move further closer to the character, we notice that it is a girl controlling the claw machine, and that they share similarities, which is that they both have bunny ears. And finally, it is revealed that both are in fact the same person, allowing viewers to realize that whatever the protagonist does, it's still with herself, making the world that much lonelier. The reveal here is the extraordinary part and also a metaphor that exaggerates the theme of loneliness. Secondly, let's take a look at the composition. They are all simple compositions following the rules of thirds, where the most important element of the shot is placed at roughly 1/3 of the canvas. Within this basic composition, lines are inferred through the use of blocks and direction elements. In the first image, buildings in the background block out the sky, leaving out the area in which the focal point is. The fence adds an element separating the foreground and background. Also, it adds a horizon that moves our sight left and right and intersecting the claw machine. Cables, footprints, and other elements are also added to further point our sight towards the focal point. The second shot follows the same rules of using lines to visually guide our sight onto the focal point. The third shot also places the focal point, which is the protagonist, at the 1/3 line. But this time, the edge of the claw machine also visually separates the two characters, showing their physical separation and also their differences in places, one on the inside and the other outside. The side of the protagonist looks up at the girl inside the machine, but instead her head is cut out of the frame, which hides her identity to the viewers. The last shot places both characters at 1/3 lines, But this time, there's no clear visual separation of the two. Rather, they're visually touching, but in reality separated by transparent glass. Also, both characters are fully revealed to be the same person, which again is the extraordinary aspect of her story. Okay, so this is an example of initially planning a storytelling scene. By following a few principles and rules, we easily build a still scene that tells a simple narrative through the placement of the camera and the placement of the props and characters within the scene. Like a storyboard, we don't have to draw with a lot of details at first. We only need to relay the vision in our mind clearly. Though this stage only covers one class out of the entire course, but in my creations, it's a really lengthy process and usually takes about 1/5 to maybe even 1/4 of the entire process of creating a piece. Planning the scene as clearly as we can greatly reduces the amount of work later on, where we know exactly what we are aiming for, the kind of narrative and the theme that we want to convey. At the same time, we would also know what kind of references, what kind of assets, and what kind of models that we need to create, so that in the middle of creating things, we won't get stuck looking for inspirations. Okay, and finally, as an assignment for this class, I want you to create your own story by thinking of a theme at first and applying the extraordinary principle, and lastly, draw your own storyboard. Okay, that's it for now. See you in the next class where we will finally start creating the characters.